Sometimes I look at my team and wonder if they deserve someone better than me. The words formed in my head before I even realized I was thinking them. We were gathered in the small office, my team sitting around the table, waiting for me to open the meeting. Their notebooks were open, pens in hand. The whiteboard behind me stood blank, waiting for me to mark it with direction. And in the silence that stretched too long, I froze. The clock ticked faintly on the wall, filling the room with a rhythm I couldn't match. I could hear someone shifting in their chair, the squeak of the leg against the floor. Another tapped a pen lightly, waiting. Every sound seemed to grow louder in the absence of my voice. I should have spoken already. I should have set the tone, laid out the strategy, given them the confidence that I had a plan worth following. But instead, I stared at the blank whiteboard as though it were a mirror, reflecting back my own doubts, amplifying them. Inside, my thoughts raced. What if I don't know enough? What if they see through me? What if I'm just pretending to lead? I swallowed, throat dry. My palms itched, but I kept them pressed flat on the table to hide the nerves. Around me sat people who had trusted me, who had chosen to work with me. They looked up when I asked them to, followed my guidance when I gave it. And yet, all I could think in that moment was, they deserve someone better than me. The silence grew heavier, stretching longer. I imagined what they were thinking. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not prepared. He's not a leader. I almost spoke, but the words caught in my throat. My shoulders rounded slightly, instinctively, as though to shield myself from the invisible judgment. The weight of leadership didn't feel like authority. It felt like exposure. And with every second of silence, my doubt carved deeper. Maybe I'm not a real leader after all. That thought hung in the air, unfinished, pulling me forward into the next layer of fear. Some days, I feel like I'm just pretending to be in charge. It's not a thought I share aloud, but it's one that shadows me often. The truth is, I've never had formal leadership training. I didn't sit in boardrooms as an apprentice, didn't climb through structured programs that stamped me with the title of leader. I started small, worked hard, made decisions as they came. Over time, people joined me, trusted me, followed me. And somewhere along the way, I found myself in this role, the one at the head of the table. But a title doesn't erase doubt. There are mornings when I look in the mirror before work and wonder, am I equipped for this? Or am I faking it until I get caught? Part of it is cultural humility. I was raised to keep my head down, to value modesty, to let actions speak louder than words. That makes me cautious, careful, but it also means I hesitate to claim authority. When I do, it feels unnatural, almost arrogant. And part of it is comparison. I look at larger firms, their glossy presentations, their polished leaders who seem to command every room effortlessly. I imagine their certainty, their credentials, their presence. Then I turn back to my small office, my blank whiteboard, my own trembling pause before a meeting, and I feel small. The mirror questions haunt me in those moments. Do you ever feel unqualified to lead? Yes, more times than I can count. Sometimes I wonder if my team is waiting for the day I finally admit I don't know what I'm doing. Do you fear your team will see through your doubts? Yes. It feels like they'll notice the cracks, the hesitation, the second guessing that I try so hard to hide. The empty whiteboard becomes a symbol of it all, a blank surface that should hold clarity, vision, direction, but instead reflects only hesitation. Every time I pick up a marker, I imagine it slipping from my grasp, proof that my hold on leadership is fragile. I tell myself I'm doing enough. That's showing up, making decisions, supporting my team counts. But the voice inside is louder. You're just pretending. You're not really leading. And yet, even in that voice, a faint counterpoint lingers. A wisdom I've heard, one I resist but know to be true. Leadership isn't authority, it's presence. Still, in the silence of the room, with my team waiting, with my doubts loud in my chest, it doesn't feel like wisdom. It feels like fraudulence. The tension builds. The silence stretches. My doubts crowd closer. And the question looms unresolved. If leadership isn't in me, how long until everyone else sees it too? The meeting was already in motion, though I hadn't spoken a word. The silence stretched too long, and then one of my team members, someone sharp, capable, unafraid to question, finally broke it. Leo, what's our strategy here? The words hit harder than intended. Maybe they were just a prompt, a nudge to get me talking. But in my mind, they landed like an accusation. You don't know what you're doing. You don't belong at the head of this table. I reached for the marker in my hand, intending to sketch something, anything, on the whiteboard to buy time. But my grip faltered. The marker slipped slightly, a small thing, but it felt symbolic, like leadership itself was sliding out of my grasp. My shoulders rounded inward. I couldn't meet their eyes. I stared instead at the surface of the table, grain patterns blurring as the thought loop began. I'm not good enough to guide them. I'm not good enough to guide them. The loop repeated, each cycle heavier, louder. My chest tightened. My palms grew damp. Around me, I imagined their thoughts, imagined them exchanging glances, silently agreeing that their leader was a fraud. I pictured them wondering if they should leave, if they'd be better off working under someone more decisive, more confident, more legitimate. The whiteboard loomed behind me, still empty. Its blankness wasn't just absence, it was indictment, proof that I had nothing to offer. In that moment, the urge to retreat overwhelmed me. I wanted to excuse myself, leave the room, hide behind the office door until the meeting ended without me. The weight of their expectations, real or imagined, pressed down so hard that escape seemed like the only relief. I whispered inwardly, a defeated confession. Maybe I'm not a leader at all. Maybe I've been pretending this whole time. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, subtle, internal, but it was real. My shoulders curved inward, my voice stalled, my spirit wavered. For a breathless stretch of time, I wasn't leading. I was shrinking. And then, in the middle of that spiral, a memory surfaced. It wasn't of a grand speech or a flawless strategy. It was of a single client, a young couple buying their first home. I remembered how nervous they'd been, how tangled the paperwork was, how many times they'd nearly given up. And I remembered the moment it turned, not because I had all the answers, but because I sat with them. I explained. I reassured. I showed up, consistently, until the keys were finally in their hands. They hadn't thanked me for perfection. They'd thanked me for presence. The memory cracked something open. I turned the words over in my mind, testing their truth. Leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about showing up. I looked up slowly, letting my shoulders uncurl, letting the room come back into focus. The doubts were still there, but they weren't as loud. What grew louder instead was the recognition. My care and consistency were the very reasons these people had followed me here. I straightened in my chair and picked up the marker again, steadier this time. The whiteboard was still blank, but it no longer felt like judgment. It felt like possibility. My care and consistency are what make me a leader. I whispered to myself first, then louder, steady enough for the team to hear in my tone, even if not in my words. I wrote one word on the board: consistency. It wasn't a perfect strategy. It wasn't a flawless plan, but it was a start, and it was true. Show up. Steady. Lead. With each phrase, my voice strengthened, my chest lifted, my presence filled the space. The team leaned in, listening, not because I dazzled them with brilliance, but because I was there, fully, no longer retreating. I turned back to them, and in that moment, I spoke not from authority, but from effort, from care, from presence. I inspire through effort, not perfection. And I believed it. For the first time that day, I believed it. The crisis hadn't vanished. The doubts hadn't dissolved completely. But I was no longer collapsing under them. I was standing in them, leading anyway. I inspire through effort, not perfection. That line echoed long after the meeting ended. It carried me through the rest of the day, not as a loud declaration, but as a quiet reminder. And like most reminders, it needed anchoring, some small ritual to make it stick. So I began something simple, an affirmation ritual. At the end of each day, before shutting down my computer, I take a pen and a sticky note. I write one way I showed up as a leader. Just one, not 10. Not a list of achievements designed to impress anyone. Just one moment where I chose presence. It could be as simple as answering a worried call from a client without rushing them, or noticing one of my staff was quieter than usual and asking if they were okay, or admitting in a meeting, I don't know the full answer, but I'll find out. Each note goes on the whiteboard. At first, the board looked sparse. One note, then two. But by the end of the week, the once empty board was alive with proof. Bright squares of care, stacked like evidence against the lie that I wasn't a leader. And every evening, as I place a new note, I speak the words aloud. My presence is leadership. The first time I said it, it felt awkward. My inner critic scoffed. That's not real leadership. Real leaders have grand plans, sweeping visions, But the notes disagreed. The notes were proof. Day by day, the ritual grew heavier in meaning. The board no longer looked empty. It looked lived in, honest, real. I'd glance at it during the day, sometimes in the middle of self-doubt, and see the bright reminders. Showed up, listened, guided, cared, and each note steadied me. I realized then, leadership isn't about filling the board with flawless strategies. It's about filling it with presence, with moments that prove I chose to show up. Even in this small ritual, I felt the doubt loosening, not disappearing, but losing its grip. Each sticky note was another root anchoring me into truth. And when I whisper the affirmation at the end, my presence is leadership, I feel it not just as words, but as weight in my chest, grounding me, steadying me. The ritual doesn't make me perfect, but it makes me present. And that, I've learned, is enough. I lead not by being flawless, but by showing up with care. That's the closing truth I carry forward. At work, the shift is tangible. My team notices, not because I suddenly have all the answers, but because I no longer hide in silence. When I don't know something, I admit it. When I'm uncertain, I still speak. When I lead, it's not from perfection, but from presence. And they respond, not with doubt, but with trust. With my family, the change softens me. The pressure I used to carry home, the weight of proving I was enough, has eased. My wife hears it in my voice, steadier, less defensive. My kids feel it when I listen to their stories without rushing, knowing that leadership at home is just as much about presence as in the office. Within myself, the greatest shift is in identity. I no longer define leadership as authority I don't think I have. I define it as presence I can always choose, and that's liberating. It means I'm never disqualified. So long as I show up, I lead. The mantra stays simple. Consistency is leadership. And the closing image that stays with me is the whiteboard. No longer empty, no longer accusing. Now it holds notes, messy, colorful, imperfect, but proof of presence, proof of care, proof that I showed up. Consistency is leadership. The whiteboard no longer empty, presence written across it. I lead not by being flawless, but by showing up with care.